Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and today I'm coming to you with a Range Report Revisit Part 2 on the CheyTac CT-15. Yes, I know it is a long title, but it is what it is. So if you're seeing this video and have not seen my original Range Report on the CT-15, or the Part 1 in this series where I revisit it because of CheyTac contacting me and my FFL, who I borrowed the original rifle from, go check out those videos now. I will put links in the description below. But if you are staying here, I'll tell you the Reader's Digest version, and that is I had a chance to review a CT-15, which is CheyTac's new AR-15 style rifle for the civilian market, a couple months ago. My FFL friend had one in, said, hey, this might be some good content for your channel. I took it to the range, and boy, oh boy, was it a hot mess. I had tons of malfunctions, failures to feed that would deform the casings. I had magazines that were not holding the bolt open. It was an absolute nightmare. Well, he contacted CheyTac and said, hey, there's something wrong with this rifle, and even referenced my video. Well, they checked out my video and said, yeah, that's some problems. And they took the rifle in and they said, wow, we made a big mistake. And we had a lot of rifles that should not have gotten through quality control. And there were some personnel changes at the factory. And anyway, what they did is they sent a replacement rifle to my FFL and one for me to review. So that's kind of the original story. But the part 1 of this story, when it comes to this video series, is the fact that I have two CT-15s on the table. One is my FFL's and one is mine. But they're two very different rifles. And I talk about that, how cosmetically they're different, in the part 1. So go check that out. Why they sent us two rifles that are actually different, I have no idea. So my FFL friend said, take them both to the range and see if we have any issues. So we have a 2000 serial number gun and a 5000 serial number gun. As I mentioned in part 1 of this video, they are both made in August of 2021, according to the information that I received with the guns. But they're very different. So at some point in there, they changed designs. The original serial number of the original rifle that I reviewed was in the 600 serial range. So a lot of rifles have been built, assuming that it's one continuous string. So I took these to the range to see if CheyTac has actually fixed the problems. So the main issue was the bolt catch and the magazines. They provide an MFT magazine with every rifle, and those gave me a lot of trouble in the original Range Report. So I took one of these. I brought a Magpul PMag 30, kind of an industry standard, and an off-brand, I guess not really an off-brand, but a lesser known and used brand, a Hex Mag. This is a Generation 1. I've had issues with these in the past. Most of my Colt ARs will run these with no problem. So if these run in this gun, I think these guns are fixed. So I'm going to show you what happens here as we take these two rifles to the range. The first shooting video I'm going to show you here is of the 2000 serial number gun, the one that I guess is earlier in the run, and if you watch part 1 is the one that is cosmetically the closest to the original rifle that I reviewed. So it has a very kind of thick billet lower and upper receiver with a chromed bolt carrier and bolt. I'm going to use all 3 magazines with 5 rounds each. This is more of a function test than anything else. I'm going to start off with the MFT magazine. I'm then going to go to the Magpul and finally the Hex Mag. So let's see if this rifle runs with these magazines. right, so good news. It seems to run. There's no malfunctions, and the magazines are feeding properly, and they all hold the bolt open. Well, now I'm going to run the same test through the 5000 serial numbered gun. This is the one that has the biggest cosmetic changes. The receivers are a little bit more milled out, I think are a little bit more attractive. And this one has more of a standard like melanited bolt carrier group. I don't know if that makes any difference whatsoever. And so we're going to run the same test in the same order with the same magazines. Uh-oh, Houston, we may have a problem. Now, I know what some of you guys are going to say. Well, is there a possibility that the gun is short stroking and not having enough gas to cycle the bolt all the way to the back, therefore not getting behind the bolt catch, and that is why it is catching on the back of the follower? Well, to test this, I'm going to run the magazines and I'm going to run them manually, so I'm able to fully cycle the bolt all the way back. And here's what happened. And it still has issues with it, only on the hex mag. Okay. All right, so as you can see, when I use the hex mag in this particular gun, and I cycle the action, it doesn't always work. Right now, it did, but I can tell you from just looking inside the receiver, that follower is barely touching the mag catch. So it kind of seems to be hit or miss, but more often it's missing. But to exactly show you what's going on, let me adjust the camera and I'll show you what the issue is with this receiver. And it was really a huge issue with the original gun that I reviewed. In fact, it was so much so that the bolt catch wasn't even close to the magazine, and that's why it never held open. But this one seems to be fixed partially. Now, the hex mags in the past have given me a little bit of issue. I fully admit that, and it's the reason why I used it in this test. I wasn't trying to make the gun fail, but as I mentioned, for some reason this follower doesn't seem to be as large or big in the back and bulky in the back as your standard PMags. I've had this same issue in a couple of my SBRs, but all of my Colt rifles and Bushmaster rifles run these mags flawlessly. So I kind of wanted to use it as a test bed to see, well, if it could run this mag, I know the gun runs perfect. Now, this 2000 series gun seems to run it great. The 5000 series gun doesn't, but the other magazines run fine. But let me give you some close-ups and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so here's the 5000 serial number lower, and the part that I'm talking about right here is this bolt catch. Something I have noticed with both of these rifles is that they are in there a little bit loose. Now, you do need to have a little bit of play in there because they do have to move up and down. But there's a side-to-side motion here that might be a little bit more than your standard AR-15. So this channel might be milled out a little bit too much. And as you can see here on the bolt catch, there's a little finger. And that is the finger that touches the follower on the magazine. So here's the hex mag. Luckily it has a very bright follower, so hopefully we'll see this on camera. And when I insert the magazine here into the receiver, you can see that that little tiny finger right there is barely on the magazine. It is just hanging on by a thread. Now, I think if I move this bolt catch back and forth, I can get it to barely stay on. So there's just a lot of motion in there. So now let me show you what it looks like with the Magpul. The Magpul has a little bit more robust follower to it here in the back. It comes back to the end of the magazine a little bit further, and that stays on the follower just a little bit more. It doesn't seem to have any issues with this one or the MFT. This one might be a little bit harder to see because the follower is black, but this one's pretty close as well, but I didn't have any issues whatsoever. So that is kind of what I'm dealing with here. So it's this little catch, and for some reason on that hex mag, it doesn't always hold back, probably because this can wobble a little bit, and the fact that this magazine has a short follower in the back. So I don't know if you have various brands of magazines, if they will all work in these, but for the most part, this rifle is running a heck of a lot better than the original rifle that I reviewed, but I can't say for this particular one, it's going to be 100%. On the 2000 serial number gun with the original type of billet lower and upper receiver, everything ran fine. Alright, so let me readjust the camera, and I'm going to continue running the hex mag to see if I can get more reliability out of it, and maybe it was just kind of a one-off or two-off fluke. So in order to be thorough, I'm going to run the hex mag with 5 more rounds through the 5000 serial number receiver and see if the issue persists. And unfortunately, it still is. And you can tell it is because when I remove the magazine, if the bolt goes home, that means the bolt catch is not activated. And essentially the bolt is being held back by the follower and not the bolt catch. So anytime you see me drop that magazine and that bolt goes home, that is what happened. Well, in order to be thorough, just to make sure that this other rifle, the 2000 serial number receiver, doesn't have the same issue, because this was a major issue with the original rifle, I'm going to try it again with just the hex mag on this rifle and see if the problem happens here. And maybe when I ran it the first time on this gun, we just got lucky. Alright, so it seems to run fine in the 2000 series gun, but not the 5000 series gun. So what does this mean, and what are my thoughts on the situation? Well, first of all, I want to thank CheyTac for trying to correct the problem. Supposedly, they tried to recall as many of the initial rifles as possible that had this issue. And they went out of their way to fully replace my FFL's rifle and send me one for review. I can tell you that when it comes to feeding issues, neither of these guns had the original issues the 600 series gun that I originally shot had. So they fixed that. The dimensions of where the magazine well was, all of that has been addressed. It also appears that the gun runs pretty good with all magazines. Well, the 2000 series does. So if you end up buying a CheyTac and it has one of the very thick fenced billet receivers, and it's a later production, probably like post 2000, you're probably going to be just fine. This rifle was very accurate, it ran fine, and all magazines ran through it and held the bolt open with no failures to feed or failures to eject. Now, if you get one of the newer receivers, which I believe is the one that they're going to, the one that looks more like a traditional fencing on the lower receiver, and the upper receiver does not have a forward assist, well, from my personal experience here, it looks like most mags will work, but not all will. If you're able to take the receivers apart and see how much play you have in this bolt catch, that might be a good idea. If it seems like it's a little bit too much, that might be a rifle to stay away from. But I'm hoping that they're going to see this video and possibly adjust this receiver a little bit more. I know after that initial debacle, they were a little bit embarrassed, and I'm sure are still checking all of the rifles that are coming out of the factory to make sure that doesn't happen again. So I'm just going to say, I think CheyTac is trying to make good. And I'm going to say that their new rifles are most likely fixed. Now, I did have one issue with a HexMag Generation 1. So this is an older style magazine and probably wouldn't have the same issue, I guess, with the Gen 2s. Maybe that's something that they corrected. So this could be a little bit of a magazine issue. But when it came to the industry standard PMags, they both ran great. And when it came to the MFT mag that they provide, it ran great. So it looks like as long as you run high quality mags, they have fixed the issue. So, would I recommend buying these rifles now? The answer is I would be cautiously optimistic. I like many of the upgrades that they have done, like the inclusion of this B5 system stock. I like it a lot better than the initial stock that they put on these rifles. I like the new look, and it appears that most of the magazines work, but I'll be cautiously optimistic. They also seem to have pretty darn good customer service, so if you do have an issue, they'll probably make it right. But I've documented my personal experience, and they sent me one of these rifles for free. So you tell me if I was unbiased or biased, or if that affected my thoughts on this, or did I do this test wrong? You guys gotta let me know in the comments section below. But as I say, I always try to be honest with you guys and just document my personal experiences. So just to recap, standard magazines and the one that comes with the gun runs fine. If maybe you have an older style hex mag especially, and there might be a few other brands out there, you might have some issues with the bolt not being held back. But as long as you run a PMag and probably a mil-spec mag, you'll be absolutely fine. So there you go. This is a part 2 range report revisit on the CheyTac CT-15 rifle. I know a lot of people are really interested in this company because they have a stellar reputation for making exceptionally accurate long-range rifles, and they're now getting into the AR-15 market. So I know it's going to excite a lot of people, and this might be a brand name that you're interested in. So there you go. What do you guys think? Did CheyTac make good and fix these rifles? I'll let you guys decide. Do you own one of these CT-15s? And do you have any issues? I'd love to know in the comments section below. And I want to thank CheyTac for sending me the rifle, and I appreciate your trust in letting me do an honest review. So let me know if you have any questions. And as always, thanks for watching.